This story, and I met Nick making my first film, and I had an opportunity after a film festival in Poland, as a matter of fact, to go to a physics conference, and I went and I met Donald Bell there, and one day I asked Donald if he knew Nick, and Donald slapped the table and said, "Know him, I'm planning a reunion with Nick. We're going to take a road trip." And I thought that would make a great film.
And how much time did you spend with these guys and how was it to work with so much brain power?
It was, so the road trip lasted about 2 weeks, and then we went back with a crew and redid some of the footage because we needed really exquisite cinematography. The first road trip I actually went on my own. We don't see a lot of that in the film because I couldn't be both a shooter and a sound recordist and a participant in the road trip very effectively. So we went back with a crew and redid a lot of it. It took me a long time actually to learn about their science in order to be able to understand how important they were. Years.
So you did years of research in astronomy and in their work to be able to make this movie?
Kind of, yeah. Yeah, I had an opportunity because of Donald in a way. Donald was invited to be a special lecturer at the University of Toronto. And out of his time at the U of T, I got a job at the U of T for 12 months. So I kind of put the project on hiatus and spent a year immersed with people working at the cutting edge of theoretical astrophysics and got to put my scientist's work in perspective.
And what do you hope that your audience will learn from watching this documentary?
You know, I wear many hats, and so I have different audiences. As a producer, I wanted to be able to say to people who commission science documentaries that there was a way to make I wanted to show them a working prototype for a character-driven story about astronomy that was more like the way science is treated in fiction, in movies, and on television. I was really pleased that one of the reviewers the film's going to have a theatrical release in England, and this movie reviewing magazine called Empire said it was like the real Big Bang Theory. It was like a real Big Bang Theory reunion, and that really pleased me because Big Bang Theory is about really smart people at Caltech, just like my characters, who are friends. It's about friendship, and it's about, but it's kind of edifying of really smart people, and I wanted to do that. And I wanted to show that there was a way that you could tell that kind of story. So as a producer, I wanted an example, so that when I develop other work, I can say, there was a market for this. As a filmmaker, I wanted to tell this story where the journey, their road trip journey, is a metaphor for our life journey. I wanted to try and tell that story. And I wanted to express the wonder that I feel for astronomy and the wonder of our existence. I wanted to make something that was that could be of service, that could give young people an example of people doing something they fell in love with as children and pursued for the rest of their lives. And I wanted to say to people who we talk about science today, particularly environmental science. We disembody it from the people who are producing the science. We forget that the people producing science about climate change are people who love the world and are driven by that love and their curiosity to learn about it. And they are telling us things about the world because they want to protect the world. And I in part wanted to say that.
If anybody has some questions, you're more than welcome to, yeah?
Well, thank you very much for a very interesting movie, and it's, in my view, a very sort of complex picture you're painting of these people. You're both the recessing horizon and the diminishing aspiration of mankind, but also in spite of their positions in early life, they challenged social structures and their educational systems and created these careers for them. But you're telling it in a narrative way, and I was interested in hearing your reflections on this, Neil Tyson's McFarlane TV series that was sort of aligned to your narrative, which also made a great impression and discusses some of the same sort of narrative language as your film is taking. And I would like to hear your views on that. If that's sort of a more common language of communication about science.
I have this idea that all of science is storytelling, and that what astronomers are doing is telling us our story. And it seems appropriate to tell stories about it. But I think a more effective answer to the point you raised is that film is a medium that's really good at evoking emotion and drama. And it seems appropriate to me that we would use the strengths of television or moving picture to tell your story about science and look for some other. So I wanted to make the film be character driven, and I wanted to offload some of the science, do more of the scientific work in a website, in an interactive website. So I gave myself permission to make a film that was largely about character. Am I answering your question?
Yes, in a way, yes. Yeah. What I was thinking, if you would recognize that there was a more creative tendency to make these connections between science and movie making, as the McFarlane produced series. So that was just your view on the landscape. If it was sort of a single pieces, or if there was a more sort of collaborative atmosphere. So that was sort of my.
You know, something that astronomy told us in the 20th century is that the universe evolved. The universe created planets and stars, and eventually it created us. And that in our creativity, we're doing what the universe does. We're participating in the creativity of the universe when it creates stuff. And we tell the same stories over and over again. So yes, I'm humbly following in the footsteps of Carl Sagan. But we continue to tell the same stories. Like ever since the beginning of humanity, we've been telling stories about where we come from. And in the 20th century, science gave us an answer to that question. Astronomy told us where we come from, told us that we came from the universe. But we've been asking that question for as long as we could ask questions.